The church fell silent as my sister walked in, dressed from head to toe in a bridal gown. She smirked at me on my wedding day. 300 guests turned to stare, their whispers cutting through the organ music. The pastor's voice faltered mid-sentence. My bridesmaids froze in their burgundy dresses. Even my 90-year-old grandmother paused from dabbing her eyes to gawk at the scene in the center aisle. Everyone expected me to yell, to tell her to leave, to turn my wedding into the drama Jessica had always wanted. Instead, I smiled, turned back to the altar, and squeezed David's trembling hand. "Please continue," I told the pastor, my voice steady, because what she didn't realize was that I had already written how this story would end. She wasn't the heroine she thought she was. Jessica strutted down the aisle like she owned it, her white silk train trailing behind her, a bouquet of white roses clutched in her manicured hands. She copied everything, my hairstyle, my makeup, even the way I planned to hold my flowers. She was wearing a wedding dress to my wedding and wanted the whole world to see me fall apart. But I didn't fall apart. I stood there, radiant in my actual wedding gown, and let her play dress-up while I married the love of my life. The guests didn't know how to react. Some stared at her, some stared at me, waiting for the explosion that would never come. But that's not where this story begins. Let me explain how we got here. Jessica had been stealing my spotlight since we were kids. When I won the school spelling bee, she suddenly developed a mysterious illness that required everyone's attention. When I made the varsity soccer team, she broke her arm falling down the stairs that same week. When I got into Harvard, she announced she would drop out of high school to pursue modeling. The pattern was always the same. I would achieve something, and Jessica would create a crisis to demand the spotlight. Our parents would rush to comfort her, to fix her problems, to make sure she felt special too. I learned to shrink myself, making my accomplishments smaller to avoid triggering her need to compete. But this was supposed to be different. This was my wedding day, the one day meant to be about me and David, about our love, about our future. I thought even Jessica wouldn't cross that line. I was wrong. The warning signs started 4 months before the wedding. Jessica suddenly became very interested in my wedding planning. She called me every other day with helpful suggestions that always seemed to put down what I had chosen. "Roses are so overdone, Emma. Have you thought about something more unique? A church wedding? How traditional. Don't you want something more memorable?" Then she started inserting herself into my appointments. She would arrive at the dress shop when I was having fittings. She'd show up at the florist while I was choosing arrangements. She'd appear at the venue when I was meeting with the caterer. Always with that sweet smile, always claiming she just wanted to help her little sister have the perfect day. But her help felt more like sabotage. She questioned every choice I made, suggested alternatives that coincidentally were more expensive or complicated. She asked the vendors to show her similar options, and then criticized what I picked compared to them. By the time she left each appointment, I felt like I had made all the wrong choices. The first big red flag came when I found her in my apartment, going through my wedding binder. I returned home early from work to find her sitting on my couch, flipping through photos of dresses, venues, and flower arrangements. She claimed she was just looking for inspiration for a friend's wedding. But something about the way she studied my choices gave me chills. "Whose wedding?" I asked. She stumbled for an answer. First, it was her college roommate, then a coworker, then a girl from her yoga class. The story changed every time I asked, but she always had an explanation ready. Jessica had always been a good liar. She'd had years of practice. That's when I started paying closer attention. I noticed how she would steer every family dinner conversation toward my wedding, then somehow shift it back to her own dating life, her dreams, her need for love and attention. How she volunteered information about David that she couldn't possibly know unless she had been digging for it. One night, she mentioned that David had been working late a lot. When I asked how she knew that, she said I had told her. But I hadn't. I had been intentionally keeping my conversations with Jessica surface level, discussing safe topics like the weather and celebrity gossip. So how did she know about David's work schedule? I started testing her. I told her David and I were thinking of honeymooning in Thailand instead of the Maldives. It was a lie, but I wanted to see what she would do with the information. Within a week, she was posting Instagram stories about how Thailand was so much more authentic than overrated beach destinations, how she had always wanted to experience Southeast Asian culture. Then I told her we were changing our wedding colors from burgundy and gold to navy and silver. Another lie. She immediately started talking about how navy was so much more elegant than burgundy, how gold was too flashy for a tasteful wedding. Every lie I fed her, she repeated as her own opinion within days. But the real evidence came when I stumbled upon her Pinterest account. Most of her boards were private, but she had forgotten I still had access from when I helped her set it up years ago. There it was, a board named My Perfect Day, created 3 months earlier, right after I became engaged. The board was filled with wedding dresses. Not just any dresses, but ones that looked exactly like mine. She had screenshotted my dress from the designer's website, along with dozens of similar styles. There were photos of bouquets that matched my flower choices, hairstyles identical to what I had planned, and even makeup looks that mirrored the trial photos I had shown her. Then I saw the most disturbing pin of all, a photo of a woman in a white dress at someone else's wedding, with the caption, "When you realize you should have been the bride." Jessica had pinned it with her own comment, "Sometimes you have to make your own spotlight." My hands shook as I screenshotted everything. I couldn't believe my sister was planning to sabotage my wedding, but the proof was right there in her own digital handwriting. She wasn't just going to wear white to my wedding. She planned to become the bride at my wedding. I dug deeper. Bank statements I still could access, from when I helped her with budgeting after her divorce, showed some interesting purchases. A white dress from the same designer as mine, bought the week after I showed her my dress photos. A matching veil from the same bridal shop. White shoes in her size. Even shapewear in white, like she was preparing to be photographed extensively. But it wasn't just the dress. She purchased professional makeup brushes, false eyelashes, and hair extensions. She was planning a full transformation, a complete bridal look for my wedding day. The amount of money she had spent on this scheme was shocking, especially for someone who claimed financial hardship for months. I realized this wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment decision about wearing an inappropriate outfit. This was a carefully planned scheme to steal my wedding day. She had been plotting this for months, maybe since I announced my engagement. The worst part was how she had been manipulating me throughout the entire process. Every suggestion she made, every criticism of my choices, every way she made me doubt myself, it was all part of her plan. She wanted me to feel insecure about my own wedding so that when she showed up looking like a competing bride, I'd be too shaken to respond appropriately. But Jessica had misjudged me. She thought I was still the little sister who cried when she stole my birthday party spotlight, who apologized when she announced her engagement at my graduation dinner. She didn't know I had developed a backbone in the years since then, so I made my own plan. If Jessica wanted to perform at my wedding, I'd give her a stage. But I would control the lighting, the music, and most importantly, the reviews. She could wear whatever costume she wanted. The audience would know exactly what they were watching. First, I hired a photographer I completely trusted, someone who had worked with difficult family dynamics before. I told him everything, Jessica's history of seeking attention, her probable plan to overshadow me, and what I needed documented. Capture everything, I instructed. I want every moment, every reaction, every uncomfortable silence. Then I spoke to my inner circle, my bridesmaids, my closest cousins, David's family. I didn't tell them exactly what to expect, but I prepared them for chaos. Whatever happens during the ceremony, I said, don't react dramatically. Don't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing you shocked or upset. Just stay calm and follow my lead. My maid of honor, Sarah, understood immediately. She had known Jessica for years and had witnessed her scene-stealing tactics at every major event in my life. She's planning something big, isn't she? She asked. I just nodded. Then we'll be ready for her. The week before the wedding, I conducted one final test. I casually mentioned to Jessica that David's ex-girlfriend might attend as someone's +1. Pure fiction, but I watched her eyes light up with possibility. She asked so many questions about this imaginary ex that I knew she was already calculating how to use the information for maximum dramatic effect. That's when I knew for sure. Jessica wasn't just planning to wear white. She was prepared to cause as much chaos as possible, to turn my wedding into a soap opera, where she could be the mysterious woman in white, the wild card who disrupted everything. She wanted drama, tears, confrontation, anything to make the day about her instead of about me and David. So I got ready for battle, but not the kind she expected. I prepared to win by not fighting at all. The wedding morning arrived gray and drizzly, but I felt more peaceful than I had in months. My bridesmaids gathered at my house at dawn, ready to transform me into a bride. They were nervous, sensing the tension in the air, but I was calm. Today, Jessica's games would finally backfire spectacularly. I took my time getting ready. Every step felt deliberate, sacred. The dress made me feel like a princess. The makeup enhanced rather than masked. The hair took 2 hours, but looked effortlessly elegant. This was my day, my moment, my transformation from girlfriend to wife. No amount of Jessica's theatrics could diminish that magic. At the church, guests began arriving right on time. I watched from the bridal room window as familiar faces flowed through the doors. Aunts and uncles, college friends, David's coworkers. Everyone dressed appropriately, respectfully, beautifully. Everyone except the white sedan that screeched into the parking lot 20 minutes after the ceremony was supposed to start. Jessica stepped out of that car like she was on a red carpet. She had outdone herself. A white silk dress with a long train, a full veil, even white gloves. She looked like she was attending her own wedding, not mine. She had completed the fantasy, making herself the alternative bride for anyone who thought David had chosen wrongly. But here's what Jessica hadn't counted on. I was already married in every way that mattered. David and I had been partners for 3 years, building a life together and supporting each other through everything. The ceremony was just a celebration of what already existed. She could wear whatever costume she wanted, but she couldn't change the reality of our love. The church doors opened, and Jessica made her entrance. The collective gasp was audible from the front of the church. Heads turned, whispers started, phones came out. She had gotten her dramatic moment, her grand entrance, her chance to steal every eye in the room. And I smiled. Not a fake smile, not a brave smile, but a genuine smile of someone who finally understood the game and refused to play it. I squeezed David's hand, nodded to our pastor, and said clearly, "Please continue with the ceremony." My voice carried through the church, steady and confident. The whispers died down. The attention shifted back to where it belonged, on me and David, making promises that would last a lifetime. Jessica could wear white all she wanted. I was the one actually getting married. The ceremony moved along beautifully. David's eyes never left my face. His vows made me cry happy tears. When he slid the ring onto my finger, I forgot Jessica existed entirely. This was our moment, our love, our beginning. She was just background noise in the symphony of our joy. Jessica sat in the front row throughout the ceremony, constantly fidgeting. She had expected her entrance to derail everything, to cause chaos and drama and tears. Instead, she was stuck sitting still, while everyone else celebrated a love she couldn't touch or diminish. Her grand gesture had turned into an awkward costume party of one. When David and I kissed as husband and wife, the entire church erupted. Real applause, genuine joy, celebration of love that was unrelated to Jessica's need for attention. She clapped too, but her smile looked painted on, forced. Her big moment had fizzled into irrelevance. At the reception, the photographer captured everything, just as I had requested. Jessica tried to position herself prominently in photos, but found guests naturally moving away from her. She attempted to give an impromptu speech, only to have the microphone mysteriously malfunction. Jessica danced alone while everyone else celebrated around her, but the real moment came during the planned speeches. My maid of honor stood up, raised her glass, and delivered the line I had asked her to include. To Emma, who showed us all today that true elegance means staying graceful even when others try to steal your spotlight. And to David, who chose the real bride among the pretenders. The room erupted in laughter and applause. Everyone knew exactly what Sarah meant. Jessica's face shifted through several shades of red, before settling on pale green. She had been called out publicly, elegantly, devastatingly. The Emperor's new clothes moment she had dreaded had finally arrived. After that, she couldn't escape fast enough. She grabbed her purse, muttered something about feeling sick, and rushed toward the exit. But her dramatic train caught on a chair leg, and she went down hard, white silk spreading across the floor like spilled paint. The symbolism was too perfect to have been planned. She scrambled to her feet, dignity in shambles along with her carefully constructed facade, and fled into the night. The white dress that was supposed to be her weapon became her surrender flag, trailing behind her as she ran from the laughter she had brought on herself. The rest of the reception was perfect. Without Jessica's toxic energy affecting the atmosphere, everyone relaxed. Stories were shared, toasts were made, dances were danced. David and I floated through it all, finally able to enjoy our wedding without the dread of what could happen next. That was 10 months ago now. Jessica and I haven't spoken since that night. She moved across the country shortly after, claiming she needed a fresh start after her divorce. Our parents finally stopped making excuses for her behavior after they saw the wedding photos and realized what she had tried to do. People still ask me how I stayed so calm that day, how I didn't lose my mind when she walked in wearing white. But here's what I learned. You can't steal someone's joy unless they hand it over to you. And I had stopped giving Jessica access to my happiness years before that wedding day. She thought wearing white to my wedding would somehow diminish me, make me less of a bride, less deserving of attention and love. Instead, it just highlighted the difference between us. I was there to celebrate love, and she was there to show desperation. The best revenge isn't making a scene or sinking to their level. It's rising so far above their pettiness that they look small and sad in comparison. It's being so secure in your own joy that their attempts to steal it only make them look pathetic. Now when I look at my wedding album, I see David's face when I walked down the aisle. I see my grandmother's tears of joy. I see our friends celebrating our love. Jessica appears in exactly 3 photos, looking uncomfortable and out of place in her desperate costume. But she's not the story of my wedding day. She's just a footnote, a cautionary tale about what happens when jealousy masquerades as love. The real story is about 2 people who found each other, chose each other, and built something beautiful together despite the noise from the peanut gallery. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing. Let them wear white. Let them make their scene. Let them show everyone exactly who they are while you show the world who you've become. Someone too happy to be bothered by their performance art. Jessica wanted to write herself into my love story as the dramatic twist that changed everything. Instead, she wrote herself out of my life entirely. And the sequel, this beautiful marriage David and I have built, is so much better without her toxic subplot cluttering up the narrative. The girl who used to cry when Jessica stole her moments died that wedding day. The woman who rose from those ashes is unshakable, unstoppable, and utterly unbothered by anyone else's desperate need for attention. She's learned that the best spotlight isn't the one you steal, it's the one you earn.